Okay, so let's talk about encapsulation, which is another idea in object-oriented programming. So one of the things you saw when I did the demo a couple of videos back is that if I want to use the, say, I want to send a message to the student, then I use a method from the parent or the grandparent, in this case, the person class. And in some ways, that's it's a nice idea that I can just inherit these methods, but actually, it's somehow it seems a bit odd to be using a method from one place when it's dealing with data from another place. So the idea of encapsulation is that data and methods that deal with that data should be kept together in the same class. Okay, and in some cases, this idea is enforced by having things kept private. So an object only knows about its own data. It doesn't even know necessarily about the stuff in the parent class. Okay, it inherits the code, but it doesn't know about the data. This isn't actually possible in Python, but we can do some better encapsulation than we've done in the previous examples. Okay, so encapsulation is encapsulating the data and methods in the one place. And as I said, the previous example doesn't really follow that concept because, for example, the print details method accesses data in all the other classes because it's checking whether that object has an attribute. So in the next example, in example 10, we're going to implement encapsulation to keep everything more or less in the same place. This is a slightly advanced topic, but I think it's worth just showing you how the code works, and then maybe you don't use it, but it's worth seeing what the idea is. Or when somebody talks about encapsulation, hopefully you'll understand it just means keeping the data and its methods, the methods that deal with that data, more or less in the same class. So when you look at this example, I'm just going to show you the code. I'm not going to run it, but when you look at the example, notice that all the classes only deal with their own data, and therefore all subclasses are going to have a print details methods which uses super to access the parent's data. Okay, so all of the classes need to have print details, but when I print details for a student, it just prints the details of the thing that the student knows about, the student class knows about, which is for example, the module and the program, or the list of modules in the program. And then it uses super to get access to the rest of the data, the name and the user ID. So here's the four classes. Okay, you can see person class is now actually much simpler because print details really only needs to be one line, which is to print out the name of the person. The user class here is also fairly simple. It's now got a print details method which prints out the user ID, but then goes to the super to print out the super class to print out the details from the super class. So it calls this method and so on. So if you think about let's think about a staff object. Suppose we're trying to print the details for a staff object. We call this print details. It calls super.printDetails, first of all, which then goes to the super class, the user class, and prints the details there. But that, in turn, calls the print details method in the person class. Okay, so this call here goes to this method here in the user class to print the details, which then goes to this method here in the person class to print the details. So that just prints the name because the person class just stores the name, and then it prints the user ID. And then once that bit is executed, then we print the job title and the modules. Okay, so actually you can see that just calling it a method for a particular object can involve quite a complicated route through the software of things that are implementing that method. But in terms of writing code, this is kind of simpler. All this code is simpler than our previous examples because each class is only dealing with the data that it knows about. So if you look at the staff again, it knows about the job, it knows about the modules, it deals with those things, but it doesn't deal with anything else because it leaves that to the other classes. It leaves it to the parent classes to deal with the user ID, okay, and it leaves the user class leaves it to the person class to deal with the name. Okay, so everything is just dealing with its own bit of data, and that when you have a much more complicated example, this may seem complicated, but it's actually a very small amount of code. When you've got much more complicated code, it's nice to have everything kind of kept in the one place where you only have to worry about the data for this particular class and let the other classes, the parent classes, handle their own bits of data. Okay, quite an advanced topic. I'm going to finish that video there, and then we'll look at the Home Hub app to see another example of inheritance.